And I'm so excited to be talking about identity in Life University. And we're looking at a guy who wrote a book about life. Now, wouldn't that be cool just to have the margin to write about different questions that you might have in life? And this guy's name is Solomon. And let me go ahead and tell you, he's smarter than you, he's richer than you, he's more hip than you are, he's sexier than you are. And so if you're thinking maybe this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, Solomon knows. God gave him a fast pass behind the curtain to see things that he didn't let other people see, a double dip of wisdom. And so he kind of rolls it out in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. I want to read that. He says, it's all meaningless. And that's kind of the whole deal under the sun, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come, generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north, and round it goes, and ever returning to its course. And all the streams flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than I can say. The eye never has enough seeing, nor the ear full of hearing. What has been will be again. He says, look, there's something. Is there anything new? He goes, no, there's nothing new under the sun. And so he kind of rolls through by saying, if you look at life under the sun, just all we have is 70 or 80 years, then every day's like Groundhog Day. You get up 6:30 and you maybe go get coffee. You go to work and you go to a certain lunch place. It's usually the same lunch place you go all the time. You get home 5 or 6 o'clock, you Netflix, and then you go to bed and you get up again. He said, hey, if it's under the sun is all you have, then every day is Groundhog Day. And he's talking about purpose. I mean, the earth is spinning through the atmosphere at 67,000 miles an hour, and your hair's not even moving. And he says, under the sun, there are 3 basic responses. He says, the first one is, hey, I would just want to make the world a better place. I want to plant a flower. I want to give a person a hug. And he says, under the sun, that's meaningless. He says, that's not going to happen. He says, you're not going to make a difference if you're only looking at life under the sun. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 4, he says, generations come and generations go. I mean, you hear this a lot at funerals. They made the world a better place. And Solomon goes, no, because everything just kind of goes in a circle. If you're looking at life under the sun, it's not just global warming. He's saying the earth that we're on is the Titanic, that it's never going to work out for you if you have the code word that you put after everything he says under the sun. You say, well, then I'm going to live, if I only have a certain amount of time here, I'm going to live to have fun. And Solomon knew how to have fun. I mean, he would say, turn down for what? I mean, he would say, hey, turn it up. But the problem with that, Ecclesiastes 1:8, Solomon says the eye never gets full of seeing and the ear never gets enough of hearing. In other words, there's a law of diminishing return, that at some point you turn out the lights and the party's over. And if all we have is 70 to 80 years here on this earth, to live for pleasure is going to leave you frustrated. Love is nothing more than a surge of chemicals, and a child is nothing more than a collection of molecules that come together and collide. You say, well, if it's not that, then I just want to rebel. And Solomon did a lot of that. I mean, the idea that I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps, that I am the captain of my own soul, that I can do this in my own strength. And Solomon's leading us to the big question, is there something above the sun? Is there more to life than I'm seeing? And Solomon's going to lead us to the big answer is yes, there is. And I want to tell you that God is better than you think. That he's not just a Mr. Rogers guy, welcome to my neighborhood, or Mr. T God, where he says, I pity the fool. But God is a perfect Father. He's an amazing creator, designer, and he's a loyal friend. John says it this way in John chapter 1, verse 1. He says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And in the Logos, the Word, everything came to be. And so what he's saying is that if you want to find meaning and purpose, that you find that in Christ, that He is the reason, the Logos, the reason for being, the purpose of life. And everybody always asks me this, then why so much tragedy? Why there's so many bad things happening in the world? And the Bible gives us the answer. In Genesis chapter 3, when sin entered the world, everything got off kilter. Everything was broken. And part of finding meaning and purpose is to realize that God made you to help reclaim God's plan in the very beginning to heal His design by pointing people to a relationship with God, the Creator. Listen, everybody knows that God is out there. Paul said it this way in Romans chapter 1. He said, when you look at all of creation and the divine qualities that are out there in nature, he says, you're without excuse. You know there's a God. You know He's there. Solomon says it this way, God's placed eternity in everybody's hearts. He's placed you in His story, in His masterpiece. History is God's story. And you got to find out what part you're playing in the story of God. Now, a few years ago, you remember the Free State of Jones came out. I was so excited because all these people that I knew were like, hey man, you got to look for me in the movie. You got to look for me in the movie. You got to look for me in the movie. Well, I'm still looking for them in the movie. And if that was you, I'm sorry. But they only had a bit part. They were really like just the background. And the gospel is the story of God's redemption. And when He's your Father, your dad is the writer and producer of the story. And He puts you in a great place in the story of God. But Solomon says if you're only living for life under the sun, he says you're going to have a real problem. See, God will let you be a tragic figure in His story. If you say, well, okay, but I'm just going to live to make the world a better place, then He says, okay, you can do that. If you say, well, no, I'm just going to live to have fun, well, He goes, well, you can do that. Well, I'm just going to live, I'm just going to do my best and pull myself up by my own bootstraps. God helps those who help themselves. That's fine, you can do that. But the reality is, you'll miss real life and real meaning and real purpose. See, what Solomon is trying to get us to understand is that you and I will never find meaning and purpose unless we see above the sun, unless we meet the Creator and the Designer. You'll never know what real life could be. Now, I'm going to tell you, as we roll into this and we look at all the different angles that Solomon has for us, and we look at identity and the things that God has for us, when you begin to see above the sun, and when you begin to understand how God has wired you, He's going to set you up for the very best life. Man, I cannot wait to get into all the different weeks of Life University and the leadership lessons and to find out why God has us here and to be able to see above the sun. Man, I love you guys, and I look so forward to spending time with you every week. God bless you.